Namaste nerds, this is Navinad, the Budget Pub Stomper, and today we're going to be talking about $100 competitive or budget competitive EDH. This is something that I'm super excited about, and there's a lot of people getting more and more excited about it, but I'm really here today to tell you why you ought to be excited about it. If you hear those little pings and dings, I've got my Discord, the Budget Competitive Discord open, so I can kind of flash over there and show you what we've been up to in the last day or two. But let's talk about. I put this whole Prezi together, so let's get into the Prezi here. So introduction to Hundo Comp, or just budget competitive. What is it? What is Hundo Comp? It's $100 max moxfield low competitive commander. So this is you build a deck. You can set your price settings to the lowest setting on moxfield, and your deck has to come in at $100 or less on moxfield. That's the idea. We're playing 4-player pods. We've done some spell table stuff. I've played in a couple of tournaments online. Well, a tournament online and another live that's $100 budget competitive, and I've got guys on the Discord that have done the same, and not in the same tournaments necessarily. There's a couple LGSs that I'm aware of that are starting to get into this, and I really think this is something that you ought to get into. I do. I think it's good timing for it too, in light of everything that's going on. I mean, you know how much change that this band list and tier level whatever discussion is having on us. It's been virtually zero. So I try to come up with some questions you might have, and then we're gonna try to answer these. So, how powerful and how fast is the format? So if you're coming from CEdh, this is gonna be a big snooze fest for you. And if you're coming from like more casual, I don't know, high power, mid power, is this going to be kind of over your head and that sort of thing. So the power level and the speed of the format, I would say, is in between like mid and high power casual commander and CEdh. I would say it's probably closer to CEdh than it is it's definitely closer to CEdh than it is battle cruiser mid power. But it's something like, in between high power and CEdh. Even though we're working with $100, you've got a lot of like CEdh players and budget competitive veterans that are, at least on our Discord, that are brewing and, kind of trying to find and optimize the best, not necessarily fastest, although that can be the best. Like, if you're a proactive deck, obviously, fast virtually equals good. Not exactly. So just to put a number on it, I would say if CEdh is a turn 3 format, then budget competitive, so $100 comp or Hundo Comp, is a turn 4 format. Now that doesn't mean that the games end on turn 4. They generally don't. It means that the fastest decks, the most proactive decks, are generally starting to put win attempts out about turn 4. Some decks can go a little faster than that some of the time. I have yet to see the deck that is consistently a turn 3 deck, although I know there are decks that are in the format, decks I've brewed, and other people have brewed, that are faster than turn 4 on average in terms of just goldfishing a win. Now, that doesn't mean that you would even try to go faster in an actual pod with actual opponents and everything that comes with that. Some examples might be like Selvala, Marwyn, Kinnan, Cody. Like, it's a turn 4 format in that the proactive fast decks set the pace, as is the case with all formats. And they're setting the pace at you guys have to be ready to deal with me on turn 4. Sometimes they'll get under you. Sometimes you'll be ready to interact and take over and turn the corner after turn 4. And somebody will get in on you with a turn 3 win. It does happen, but it's a turn 4 format, the same way Modern is a turn 4 format. So I'd say the speed is maybe comparable or on par with Modern. Now, how long do the games actually last? Well, they don't usually end on turn 3 or 4. They usually go to like turn 6, 7, 8. That's been my experience. But there's a nice little range. I'd say the range is going to be between generally turn 3 and like turn 9. That's probably the range where most of the games are going to happen. How diverse is the meta? It's like infinitely diverse. I mean, it's the most diverse meta. I would go on record and say that I think if you consider budget competitive or Hundo Comp its own format, or if you talk about it in those terms, so it's like a quasi kind of a format within a format within a format. But to the degree that we can call it its own format, I would say it's the most diverse format that exists in Magic the Gathering. You can do just about anything. There's a guy that was giving us data from a tournament or a league that maybe ended up in a tournament from his LGS, and he was sending us spreadsheets, and I went over it, and there's like almost as many decks as there are players in these events, right? I don't think to date I've actually sat down and played a mirror match. I don't think that's happened yet, but there's just tons of unexplored territory, tons of viable strategies, and so it's a very, very diverse meta. And, I say there's tons of viable strategies. So what strategies are viable? And so fast combo is definitely a viable thing. Decks like Kinnan, Marwyn, Selvala that are, just trying to go burr. Kinnan maybe is a half step slower than a Marwyn or a Selvala, but it's also got interaction and a better grind plan. So kind of pivot decks that are sort of able to seize windows when they come up, like Kinnan is a really good example of that. That's a viable strategy where you've got speed that you can use to go through a window whenever a window opens. You've got interaction to stop the interaction to usually, if you're playing Kinnan, I think what you're going to end up trying to do is you're going to set up to win. You're going to wait for a window. And even though you could put a win attempt out on turn 4 or even 3, generally you're probably going to be waiting till like turn 4 or 5 and then trying to have a good protected win. So that's a viable strategy. So go burr, a lot of that's mono green or Cody, or what are some of the faster decks? Hulk decks can be really fast. So you can go burr and Golgari, you can go burr and mono green. Malcolm decks like Malcolm Kedis can go fast. It's not a turbo deck. Malcolm Tana, again, I wouldn't consider that a turbo deck, but they can go fast. So you've got like fast, speedy decks that are trying to win on turn 3 or 4. That's one very viable strategy. You've got like pivot decks. I would call them pivot decks, like Malcolm Kedis, Malcolm Tana, Kinnan, decks that can go fast, but I'm going to use one of my personal decks that I play probably more than any other deck is Malcolm Kedis. And the way I explain playing that deck is it's not like you're playing the deck as much as you're surfing the deck. The deck is kind of feeding you what it wants to do this game, and then you're just sort of gently guiding it in the direction that it's already trying to present you the opportunity to move in, if that makes sense. So that's what I'd call like a pivot strategy. Then you've got control strategies, and control strategies are viable. In fact, the winning deck from this pretty big event that my Discord buddy sent, the winner of that event was Ren, the new rat commander, and it's just like a total control shell. It's like trying to it's loaded to the gills with black and blue interaction. It's got the blue counterspell suite. It's got the black removal suite. It's trying to stop everything, and it gets the Ren. If you're not familiar with the commander, it creates a rat token. I might be missing this a little bit, but it's something like this. It's a Dimir rat commander that says whenever a creature enters the battlefield, the graveyard, I think you exile it, and then you create a 1/1 rat token for each creature that died on each turn, something like that. And then your rats get +X, where X is the number of rats you control. So you're just loading the deck up with counter spells and interaction, creature removal, because every time you kill one of your opponent's creatures, it creates a threat for you. And so you can just load the deck up full of counter spells and, defense. And you can count on the commander to work as sort of just a win condition all by itself, so you don't have to load your deck full of win conditions. You can really focus in on control. So that's a control strategy. Brago is a good control deck. That's a control strategy. Niv Mizzet can be a viable strategy because you've got all these board wipes and counter spells and bolts and removal. You've got all the interaction, but then you have a very condensed win condition in the command zone. There are tricks to get it out ahead of curve, but really the thing is you're just trying to control the game long enough for you to find your very difficult to interact with combo. Your commander cannot be counterspelled, And then even if they try to remove it, you draw cards off of that. So it's easier to defend Niv Mizzet. So you can either, as you're turning the corner with the control deck Niv Mizzet, you can play your commander out as a value engine, or you can just hold it and wait until you're ready to literally win the game, and then just use it as a very condensed win condition. So that's a viable strategy. One of the tournaments I've played, the winning deck was Winota, which is sort of a combat-y, stacksy. It wasn't super hard stacks, and it did have a combo finish, but it was mostly, I would say, a very fast turbo beatdown deck. It did win a lot with the combo. It was using Breath of Fury stuff, so it's kind of an interesting combo that you wouldn't necessarily see in CEdh, but might be just a little bit too good for casual. And so that's kind of, if that's where you're at, if you're building decks that are maybe just a little bit too strong for a lot of your LGS play groups, but you don't want to go straight on into CEdh because maybe you're not comfortable with proxying and you don't have, $4,000 to build a deck, totally understandable. Or maybe you just don't like that play style. This is a step back from that. Again, you're not going to have like a Godo or a Godo type deck just go like, turn one, I was going to say Mana Crypt. That's not a thing anymore. Okay, so you're not going to have a Rog side deck just take off and win the game on turn two. It's just, I don't know if it's impossible, but I've never seen it. And I've been playing the quasi format for a long time. I have kind of a lot of experience with it. So there's almost endless strategies. Control, mid-range for sure. Malcolm Tana, Malcolm Kedis, Magda, you might call a mid-range deck, although again, it can go pretty fast. That can be a turn 4, pretty consistent turn 4 winning deck. Urza is a control deck, so you've got control, you've got some stacks options. Brago can be a stacks deck or a control deck or kind of a hybrid of both. Combo, obviously fast combo, control combo, lots of combo. But you can do things like Yuriko Tempo, where you're not really playing dedicated win conditions. You're just doing like the old turns and burn or burn and turns, where you're flipping huge 12 mana delve spells off the top and just burning everybody out. And Yuriko can be built as a combo deck, but it's always going to have I would say that the main way that Yuriko wins, I've played against it a lot. The main way that it wins is by just damaging the table out. You can put things like, what's the 1 black mana like mini Shieldred effect whenever, it combos with Grinding Station. The quest counters, I can't think of it, but there's that's gonna Bloodchief's Ascension. You can add like Bloodchief's Ascension and really just try to murder your opponents the old-fashioned way, and you're playing sort of like a tempo game plan at that point. You're playing your win condition in the command zone. It's very resilient. It's an engine and a win con, and then you again can load up with enough control pieces to keep yourself safe and interact with your opponent's win attempts, and then just try to burn everybody to death. So all of them, stacks, fast combo, mid-range, pivot. You could probably say tempo for some of the decks like Yuriko, and control, heavy control. And who's playing it? Well, a lot more people than were playing it a year ago. There are a lot of people that are CEdh players, pretty enfranchised, that just like to step back a little bit, take a step down. It's also a good way to meet people in the middle. Like if you've got a group of people, or your LGS, let's say you've got, this many, maybe you've got half of the players play high power and half play mid power, and that doesn't make sense. I was going to have 3 halves. A third play mid power, a third play high power, and then you've got a third of the LGS that's playing CEdh. Or maybe you just play CEdh and you really want to try to, what I like to call, turn the LGS to the dark side of the force. This is a really good stepping stone in between more casual and like actual CEdh type play. So who's playing it? CEdh players that are stepping back a little bit, and I would say deck brewers, people that are like really into brewing. That's my thing. For me, this is the best place to brew that there is. I also think the gameplay is the best, but it's like wide open. It's hard to just net deck. You really actually have to do your own work, especially if it's a new commander. But even if it's not, like it's hard to find, unless you go to exactly my stuff, and I don't have a huge following. there's not a lot of places where you can get a lot of ideas or let alone like actual built decks for you. Now, if you do want to net deck, I've got plenty of them. Check out my moxfield. I'll have some kind of a link to it. And there's, I think, 63 $100 budget competitive decks on my little roster at the moment. So who's playing it? It should be you. And it's also people that are, I would say, disillusioned with the idea of, or the culture of casual Magic, casual Commander, where sometimes you're like shamed for winning, or you win and you feel guilty and you think, oh, was my deck too powerful, or should I not have played this card, or is this too strong for these people? None of that. There's none of that, but it also isn't the turn 2 win kind of a format, and it's also not like the hide behind a wall of free interaction and draw engines, because you just don't have access to all of those. So I think it's kind of the sweet spot as that's concerned. Okay, so why should you play the format? Well, I mean, this is easy, and this is what we came to discuss today. It's because the format, and I'm gonna say something a little bit more technical, so if you're not real technically minded, this may go over your head, but it's because the format fucking slaps. It really does, right? Like, you don't have the non-games. Everybody's always in the game. You could even bring like a non-CEdh deck and feel like a non-competitive deck, I should say. That's just like a beatdown deck, like an upgraded precon, and you'll feel like you're participating in the game. You're not just going to get raffle stomped on turn 2. It's not like you're going to see one guy try to win on turn 2, get stopped, and the next guy wins on turn 3, and you were sitting here with like your beatdown plan and never even got to play your first creature out. It's just not like that. Now, I'm not saying that combo decks don't have an advantage, or that you shouldn't build combo decks, or that you should just play upgraded precons and that's going to be good enough. It's probably not going to be good enough to win a lot of games, but you'll feel like you're in the games. So for new players, or players that are new to more competitive, it's really good because they can take even new players, even brand new players that are just trying to first find themselves, right? Like stretching their brewing muscles maybe for the first time. They don't have to be optimized decks to feel like they're participating in the game. Like if you take one of those, like an upgraded precon, or a guy that's only been playing for a few months and he builds his own deck and he sits down at a CEdh table, it's kind of going to wreck the game for everybody else, because then it turns into like a 3-player game instead of a 4-player game. Well, this is not like that. Again, a new player with a new deck that he built himself, or an upgraded precon, or like a, I don't know, $100 Krinko deck probably isn't going to win the most games. It probably won't hit that 25%, although Krinko arguably could. But so the idea, though, the point is, somebody who's kind of new to competitive, or maybe even new to Commander, who's building their first deck, they're not going to be ruining the game for the other 3 players. It's not that kind of feel. So the power level is a little bit more dispersed evenly, and you're getting your wins and your edge from solid deck building and playing, good cards and good win conditions. But in my experience, it always feels like when you win a game of this, I'm going to call it a format, in this format, it feels like you earned it. It always feels like you had to do some gigabrain stuff to make it happen. And also, on the same note, when you lose a game, it usually feels like there was something that you could have done to win. You'll look back and think, oh, damn, if I would have done this instead of this, I probably would have got there. So it's, I think it's a more skill testing format, not just in the gameplay, because honestly, CEdh is super skill testing when it comes to the gameplay. And it does require a more in-depth rules knowledge than other ways to play. But most players that are playing CEdh are not exercising what I think is one of the coolest parts, or one of the most important aspects of being, quote, good, and that is deck building. Because, most of the archetypes are fairly established, and the best decks have been being worked on for years with a big brain trust of people. And it's just kind of hard to enter CEdh as a brewer, especially if you've not been playing for a pretty long time, and do something new and exciting that actually works. I mean, it's not as wide open. It's more wide open. CEdh is more wide open than most formats, but it's not nearly as wide open as budget competitive is. Like, just for an example, this is I think this will kind of be a good way to put that in perspective, or highlight that concept. So in CEdh, we pretty well know what the best combos are. We could say like maybe Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation is the best way to just finish a game. It's the best. It's not usually how decks actually function. They're not just like, not too many decks are just looking to tutor for those 2 cards and then put them on the stack and win. But they're the best. They're arguably the best, most efficient. It's a 2-card combo, A plus B. Thoracle's hard to interact with. If Demonic Consultation gets interacted with, you don't just lose the game. So it's a very good combo, and it's only 3 mana. It's easy to tutor, especially in those colors. So, well, in those colors, it's tutorable. And we know that, like, the other main, like, best win conditions would be, like, breach combos. I think it would be hard to argue that Underworld Breach and Demonic Consultation with Thassa's Oracle aren't, like, 2 of the best CEdh win conditions. So it's like we know what the best CEdh win conditions are, and we kind of know what the best strategies are. You can do, like, turbo ad nauseum. I'm not going to go into a whole big lecture on all the things you can do in CEdh, but it's pretty well established what, like, the top few are. Then when you get down to the ones that are, 3, 4, 5, like what's the 6th best combo in CEdh? Well, nobody knows, right? It gets murky. Well, honestly, just because of the monetary, what do I want to say? The expense of the top tier combos makes them not as easy to play in budget. So if you do try to play one of these really top tier combos, then it's sucking a lot of the budget out of the rest of your deck. And so my point is, it's not at all clear what the best thing is to be doing. It's not at all clear. It's not at all clear what the best 2 things, or the top 3 things, or the top 4 things. It's all wide open. You could say, well, yeah, the best thing is still Thoracle Demonic Consultation. Yeah, but maybe that's $30 of your $100 budget, So, yeah, it's I think that's a good way to put it, a good way to conceive of it. Or to kind of show why I think the format is so wide open. This is where we're at. It's just, there's tons of experimentation. There's tons of new cards that come out all the time. A lot of them, when you're talking about literal full power CEdh, most of your new cards are not gonna really sniff that format, because we already have years and years of these, like, staples that are established. It's going to be pretty unlikely that a counterspell comes out of the next set and usurps, like, I don't know, what are the best? Force of Will and Fierce Guardianship, if you want to call it a counterspell, Deflecting Swat. It's unlikely that we're going to get a new card that usurps those cards, right? But we get lots of new cards that we can really look at seriously for this format every set. Every time a set releases, there's new shit. In fact, there's a deck that we were brewing last night, and it's been sort of like, I would say, the holy grail of budget competitive for as long as I've been aware of this quasi format, which is Gitrog Monster. And I don't want to do any spoilers here, but long story short, the way that we were able to make the deck work at $100, there were a few ways. One was to spend $40 on a Titan and have a kind of bad deck otherwise. One was this combo that used dredge cards that it caused you to play a bunch of extra dead cards or really bad cards to, like, gain infinite life, or enough life to use your Noxious Revival to put your Gaia's Blessing. It was very complicated, and it used a lot of dead cards, so we were able to find a brand new way to win with Gitrog without playing all the dead cards, but we had to put our thinking caps on, and it required a new card that just came out in, I think, the last set. No spoilers here, because they're still talking about that on the Discord. What else? So let's kind of, I'm gonna wrap it up a little bit here, and then I'm gonna actually show you the Discord and what's been cooking on our Discord for the last day or two, and maybe we'll go into my Moxfield account and I'll show you some of the things I'm working on there, kind of depending on how we are doing on time and how we might be doing on time. Minutes and 44 seconds. That's not right. Okay, there. The clock stopped ticking. So, conclusion. What have we found out so far? That the format's epic. That none of your shit gets banned out from under you. You're not going to lose, $1,000 when they roll out one ban. I lost like $2,000 in cards with this last anti-CEdh ban. So none of your shit gets banned. It's a wide open meta, and we don't know what the best things are yet. People are still trying to figure it out. I bet you if you talk to the 5 or 6 most, prolific, or the deck builders that are building the most seed or budget competitive decks, if you talk to the top 5, I bet you'll get, I don't know if you get 5 different answers about what the best thing to be doing in the format is, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if you did. I bet there'd be a disagreement on the exact best 5 decks, and there'd be no consensus on even what the best win condition is, or even the best cards to play. Like, it is really, truly still wide open. There's tons and tons to uncover, discover. And by the time we get the stuff sort of anything resembling figured out, new stuff comes out. And you have to build your own deck. So if you're a brewer, you really kind of have to do your own thing. And even if you use a deck list now, and there's not many of them, but if you go to one of my deck lists and you use it now, by next month it might have gone up $40. And you're going to have to make a bunch of cuts and a bunch of switches and a bunch of adds. Or maybe it drops $80, drops to $80, and then you've got $20 of stuff where you're going to have to think for yourself. Or maybe you want to use a different commander, and you have a feeling that it's probably viable. And I mean, honestly, odds are it is viable, and that's maybe not the case in CEdh. I'm not saying every commander is viable and budget competitive. If you're interested in finding out how to know if a commander might be competitively viable, I did a video on that. I don't think I'll actually remember to link it, but you can look through my stuff on how to know if a commander is viable for competitive play. And I did like a budget competitive version of that. But you have to build your own deck. Basically, you're going to... and any color combination can be played. And that's like not something that's necessarily true in CEdh. Like, can you play Orzhov in CEdh? I mean, not really. Not if you're being intellectually honest, right? Because, Tymna's the best Orzhov commander, and you get to pair her with another commander that's going to give you access to at least one more color. So there's really not a good argument for playing an Orzhov CEdh deck. But for sure you could make an Orzhov competitive deck at $100 that's absolutely justifiable. In fact, I have done. And there's good reasons to play all of the different color combinations. I don't know that there's a color combination that is not justifiable. I think they all can make sense. Also, you can play 5 colors, or you can play 1 color, and it's not obvious which one's better. Or you can play 2 colors. It's like 5 colors gives you a bigger, broader card pool. That's good, but it costs a lot of money to build a land base, or you're going to have to sacrifice in other ways, like playing, temples and stuff that come into play tapped. And so it's got that. I think this is the way Richard Garfield intended the game to be played. Seriously, I know that's thrown around a lot, but I think that there was supposed to be a cost for adding additional colors to your deck. That's what the mana system does. In CEdh, that's largely gone. I mean, if up to 3 colors, your mana is basically perfect, and that's just not the case when you're playing in budget. At 5 colors, you can get pretty close. You can build a very, very functional mana base at 5 colors in CEdh. Even more so a 4-color mana base. So much so that it gets hard to justify not playing 4 colors. And I think that's a problem. That stifles creativity and it hurts diversity. Diversity? Yeah. So yeah, you can play any color combo because they're all viable, but also they're all justifiable. And I mean from 1 to 5 colors, you can make an argument for any of those. I thought 5 colors might actually be a bit much. I didn't think it could really be done very effectively. But I've been proven wrong on that. I've seen a couple of 5-color decks now that are actually really good on $100. Now, the coolest thing about the gameplay is what I call, I say that it's in the Goldylock Zone. I touched on this a little bit, but there's 2 games of CEdh that I really personally don't like playing. One is the game that ends on turn 1 or 2, where we spent more time shuffling and resolving mulligans than we spent playing the game. Maybe somebody didn't even get a turn 1 or 2. For sure, it happens often that players don't get a turn 2. That's not that much fun. I think that's it's neat. It's interesting that it happens on occasion. It's exciting, these games, right? I think we can agree those aren't the best games. If that was every game, nobody would play it. Or, well, I wouldn't play it. So that's one. You don't have the non-games that end on turn 2, and very rarely even non-games that end on turn 3. Is a game where either the game became very stacked out, and or multiple players were able to establish value engines, heuristic studies, remoras, those kinds of things. I was trying to think of the new one, Trouble in Pairs. When people are able to establish these value engines early and they get to play a ton of free interaction, then they're able to just draw a bunch of cards and stop everybody else from winning. And you end up in a spot where nobody wants to even try to win, because what's likely going to happen is the first person who tries to go off will be stopped, and that will open a window for the next person in line. It's almost like trying to win the game becomes a form of king-making in a lot of CEdh games. Well, that doesn't happen in our little sub-format. It just really doesn't. You don't have games that are going... I almost want to say that on average, these games don't take as much time as CEdh games. I'm sorry. They're faster. I would say that. I think that on average, $100 competitive games do not take as long as CEdh games, especially in the mid-range hell era, which I think we're still in, or maybe we escaped it for 4 seconds and got thrust back into it with bannings. But I digress. The idea, what I'm trying to get across is, if you don't like the non-games that end on turn 2, but you don't like your games going to time if you're playing in a 90-minute, tournament, or you just don't like your games devolving into this weird standoff where whoever goes first loses and opens the door for all that nonsense, where the game just drags on for an eternity. Those games can be fun. I don't mean that they can't. I don't think those are the best games, and you don't get those in our quasi format. In our little niche within a niche, almost like the vast majority of your games they're gonna go between turn 4 and, like, I would say the majority, like more than 50% of games will end somewhere between turn 5 and turn 8. I mean, that's pretty cool, right? Like, you get to take your gloves off and do what you can do given the constraints of the format. You don't have to pull any punches, but you still get to play a meaningful game that's highly interactive, where everybody's kind of doing stuff. It's very rare that there's somebody just kind of sitting out while 2 players are the only players that matter in a game. You just don't have that. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a great thing. Now, another big plus is, it seems to me like the community itself is fantastic. So the games are in the Goldylock Zone and the community rocks. The Discord community that's growing up around my little tiny channel and our little LGS thing, it's fantastic. I mean, everybody on there is super cool and welcoming and inviting and helpful. Not gatekeeping, there's not a lot of arrogance and assholes on there. There really isn't. And, I like to think that we had something to do with that we tried to curate that environment, but I don't know if that's actually true, because we just haven't had to try. Like, everybody just seems to genuinely be cool, respectful, helpful, polite. It's a great community, so I think you should come to it. I think there's a couple more little slides. Oh yeah, what are some of the things we found out so far? Like, what are some of the best decks that we found? I think Golgari Hulk, and this is not in any order, and this is really just my opinion, I think Golgari Hulk is really good, and I would say right now, because we just had a bunch of reprints, Golgari has been helped a lot lately in the budget realm. We got like infinite reprints of Assassin's Trophy and Abrupt Decay, which are like maybe the 2 best removal spells in the format. So, and also Hulk got reprinted, and then you got the special art, and he's down to like, I don't know, $4 or something. The Hulk piles are very inexpensive. So Golgari Hulk and it's a fast deck. It's a resilient deck. It's got pros and cons. All these things do. But it's one of the best things. We found that does win games. Malcolm Kedis, or Malcolm with a red commander, so it's usually Malcolm Kedis or Malcolm Tana, but I could see Malcolm Breaches. That could be a thing. My personal favorite, Malcolm Kedis. I think it's one of the best decks in the format. I think it's one of the best things you can be doing, but it's not like the hands-down best thing. There's lots of the best things you could be doing. But Malcolm gives you access to Glinthorn, which is a 1-card combo with your commander. That's busted. Blue and red are both fairly budget friendly. You've got a really strong mana base. You're making treasures, which sort of like when you go from CEdh to non-CEdh, what you really miss the fast mana and the free interaction. And Malcolm kind of sort of skirts the need for either of those by bringing its own fast mana along, and allowing you to continue to increase what you're doing. Like you get to keep building your board state and advancing your game plan while making treasures, which allows you to hold up interaction much in the same way you could hold up free interaction in a CEdh game. And this doesn't start on turn 4 or 5 or something like that. Like Malcolm comes down on turn 2 every game. I mean, damn near every single game, unless there's something else I want to do. But I've built the deck in a way that gets that turn 2 Malcolm, followed by a turn 3 CEdh, attack, make 3 treasures, and have mana open to protect your commander on the swing. So starting on turn 3, you've got interaction open. So your engines are online and you're rolling. And you've got good win conditions. Yuriko, Kinnan. These are fantastic. Kinnan is a fast deck that's also interactive and grindy. It's so freaking good. It cheats mana. It's got a mana outlet for your combo. It's a combo piece. It kind of checks all the boxes. Dorks are really good in the meta, or in the whatever you want to call it. In budget competitive play, dorks are good, and Kinnan turbocharges your dorks. Yuriko, it uses a bunch of draft chaff, so the deck is really inexpensive to build the main deck. Like the most important parts of the deck are very inexpensive, so you're allowed to play, like Submerge and Commandeer and the big flip, like the Delve, Treasure Cruise, and and like the Miracle extra turn spell and the Delve extra turn spell. So you get to play a bunch of really powerful cards, and you have a value engine in the command zone that is nigh impossible to deal with. It's so hard to get rid of Yuriko. So you get an engine. It's hard to deal with. It cheats mana. The commander cheats mana itself. It's drawing cards and it's a win condition. It's really good and it's inexpensive. Selvala, busted. I mean, we just got a bunch of extra, a bunch of almost Selvala specific reprints. The deck was getting a little bit hard to keep under $100, and then they just reprinted all the Selvala cards, and now this deck is freaking sick. At $100, it's sick. It's as good or better than it's ever been at $100 right now. It's a really good time to play Selvala. Marwyn, not much different. Arguable which one's better. Marwyn tends to feel a little bit more smooth. It's better at the mana part. You don't have to, you can cast it off a Soul Ring mana because it's 2 colorless and a green. So that's a little more forgiving. And you don't have to pay a green and then tap it to make the mana like you do with Selvala. And it doesn't call for you to play all these terrible cards in your deck, like the 8/8 for 3 that has cumulative upkeep, punch yourself in the dick, You don't have to play any of those cards. So Marwyn has some advantages there. But Selvala, first of all, turns those cards into easy, big mana. And it's able to turn that mana into big card draw. So I feel like Marwyn's a little more smooth. And maybe even a little more consistently fast. And Selvala is just a little bit more like meaty. It's more grindy. I guess it's more, maybe that's not the right term. It draws more cards is really what it comes down to. It draws just bunches and bundles of cards. If you get stopped on your early win attempt with Marwyn, sometimes you can be in trouble. That's my intuition after goldfishing it a bunch. I've not played it in a pod, but I've seen it played. And I've played Selvala a lot. And the $100 Selvala deck can usually threaten a win on turn, sometimes 3, almost always 4. And then if it gets stopped, it still has things to do because it can still just take off and storm off out of nowhere on turn 5 or 6 or 7. Magda is phenomenal. You can build you could take like a totally legitimate CEdh Magda build, and you could take 20 cards out of it and replace them with 20 cards that aren't that much worse and you get $100 Magda. So how could that not be amazing? And it is amazing. It's again, a mana engine in the command zone and a combo piece. It's like everything you want in a commander, especially in competitive and especially in budget competitive. Winota, although it does not make very much sense to me on paper why it's so good, the damn thing just wins a lot. So got to give it credit. These are some of the things. I'm not saying any of these are like the best, and that's not in any order. So what are we up to right now? Guys are brewing. Some of the things I'm seeing, Cephras, Yisan, Ren, Tassiger, Omnath, like all of these things are being discussed, and with like seriously being discussed. Like I've not ever seen a single one of these decks played, but they're all like super viable strategies, and some of them I have never heard of. Well, heard of being played as a budget competitive deck until like a week ago. But they're legit. They're legitimate threats, and they're being brewed right now. Now, I put this little slideshow together a bit ago. Maybe I should show you what's actually being worked on right now. Again, we're going to check the time and see how we're doing. Way worse than I thought. Let's just take a quick peek. Okay, so this was yesterday? Okay, so this was yesterday. Yep. All this was yesterday. Got a lot of different people on here. A lot of conversation. This is where we started doing, we're talking about what each person was thinking about brewing or should they brew. And then we got on to this $100 Gitrog monster, which started out one way. And then we got on a little like conference Discord call where Fallen here and myself were trying to figure out how to make this deck work like really well on $100, which meant like how to build it without having to spend the $40 on a Titan. We went over so many ideas and so much stuff that almost worked or would probably work, but it wouldn't be shortcuttable. And we ended up putting the $40 Titan in and building just a $60 98. And then we got joined by Nacho here, who first threw up a bunch of ideas that were stuff that paths we've already gone down and things we'd already tried and didn't work. And it's like, well, why don't we do this? And it's like, well, because of this. And, well, did you think about that? Yeah, we thought of that. And then eventually, as I was just about to give up on him, he came up with a card that is a 4 black mana that can be cast at instant speed and work as a win condition. And it totally saved the project. And now we actually have a brand new take on the Gitrog monster. All this was from yesterday. So, like, this is active, right? We've got people on here, considering how new it is. And how, like, I'm not even nerd famous, and we're drawing a crowd, and it's not just me that's drawing the crowd is drawing the crowd. Yeah, so what are some other things we're working on here? Yeah, so, not Selvala, but Nagila ends up being a very powerful 5-color deck. All right, and then this was me talking about what should I put together for today. And these were some of the ideas I had. And yeah, I got the answer that maybe it's a good time to do a recruiting video, which you're watching right now. This was one of the other things I was going to do, and I will do soon. Well, first of all, the guys and I that kind of brewed the Gitrog monster last night, I was like third fiddle, I'd say. Like, Fallen was kind of the main guy. I was like helping him out. And then Nacho came on and kind of put the big, I don't know, finishing touch on. Then they built the deck, and it's fantastic. And I was going to have Fallen on, and probably still will do, to discuss the different types of frog decks, the different types of Gitrog monster decks at $100. What I would say 3 different building paths are, the pros and cons of each, which one he thinks is the best, what kind of experience he's had goldfishing it, or if he builds it in paper by then. How it's been playing. And we've got people playing on Spell Table. You can get to the Spell Table thing from our Discord and join us at Spell Table. It's starting to pick up. We kept getting very close to having a pod form, and then we started getting pods to form. Now, it's not every day. It's not all the time. It's not super easy, but it's happening. And it's happening more. It's happening at an increasing rate. This was the Belby deck I was going to go over. I think this thing is so cool. I haven't done any of these. It's very different than a lot of the decks I've done. Like, yeah, we are using Hoarding Broodlord, but we're using it in a different way. For one thing, we can actually just cast the damn thing. So Belby allows us to make 6 colorless mana virtually every turn. We'll have a bunch of dorks out, so we can just cast our Hoarding Broodlord, or we can just cast our Peer into the Abyss, or we can just start dropping nasty stacks pieces and big Vilis, Brokers of Blood, and Terastodons, and it's got really interesting, and we get to play Kozilek, and I think we get to play it in a way that actually makes sense. And we have a totally unique win condition in Mike and Trike. And we've got different ways to get to this. The easiest and coolest way to get to this, when you look at any of these cards, remember I'm making 6 extra colorless mana on every turn, more or less. So Tooth and Nail is pretty easy to cast. It's really not at all hard. We've got Rituals, we've got Dorks, and we make 6 colorless on every attack phase. The Tooth and Nail Entwined gets this Triskelion and Mycaeus Hollowed into play. And when these two interplay, you win the game. There's a little more to it than that, but that's basically it. So, yeah, this is what I was going to do. Talk about how we're going to just start dropping stacks and big mana and drawing a ton of cards until we can find either a combo naturally, like just naturally assemble a combo, or draw into it with our tons of draw X spells. Or just, cheat a Hoarding Broodlord into play one way or another. Or Mike and Trike people to death. But I think that's going to do it for now. That's way longer than I anticipated this video being, or how it's longer than I expected to let it play for. So I appreciate you hanging in with me. If you're still there, you're truly one of the chosen. You're one of God's true people. And we are doing God's work on the Stomping Grounds Discord. For sure we are. Until next time, guys, word to your mothers, word to your fathers. May the force be with you, and may peace be with you, and also with you. To all the girls I've loved before, East Side until the day that I die. Namaste, nerds.